Welcome. Another fun interview. I have Jenn Stone on today, and Jenn we found each other randomly online. I'm in the senior space, starting your parent porter. I want to work with aging adults, and we just came on each other's radar, and we're like, we definitely have to meet because I think we have some stories that we need to share together. So I'm going to introduce my friend Jenn Stone here. And Jenn, will you just tell everyone who you are, what you're doing, and how it kind of came about?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation, Nicole. I really appreciate the opportunity. I am Jenn Stone. I am the founder and CEO of Finishing Well at EOL LLC. If you are not familiar or your listeners aren't familiar with the abbreviation EOL as end of life, and I am an end of life doula, which means that I
Interesting.
support families and caregivers and patients at the end of life. I will go ahead and just be transparent and say that I have not had any clients outside of family as of yet. I have been filling my doula role primarily through education. I hosted death cafes for 2024 to just encourage people to talk about death, their experiences, ask their questions, and just give people a space to talk about something that I don't think we talk about enough. I think most people spend their lives avoiding the topic of death.
Yeah, what is a death cafe? Like, I'm not totally familiar what a death cafe
Yeah,
is.
that's a great question. So, a death cafe is a movement that was started by a gentleman and his mother in Europe. I can't remember where exactly, but you can find the story on deathcafe.com. It was a movement that was started to get people to talk more about death. The gentleman had a loss in his life and realized that, people were really uncomfortable. So he and his mom started hosting what they called death cafes. And it's literally just a forum. It's just a space that's created for people to come bring their experiences, anything death related. It's not a grief support group. It's more, let's just talk about what death means to us, or, the experiences that we've had with it and the impact that it has on us. So, yeah, it was started by that guy, and then an American brought it here. And so now there's a website that's hosted where you can register your death cafes. And I'm still getting, even though I haven't hosted one since last year, I'm still getting people looking for that kind of connection. So I'm thinking about starting it up again maybe in a couple months.
Okay. And you've done some grief groups as well.
Yes, thank you. I recently, in July, started a grief support group. I call it life support because I believe that grief is expressing grief and acknowledging grief and processing and working through our grief is super important. And I don't believe that our society gives enough space for that. I think we want to just distract, we want to move on, we don't want to feel the feelings. And what that does is just keeps them kind of trapped in here. And so I got a download that I should start a grief group. I'm like, yes, that is in perfect alignment. And I like to live fairly high vibrationally, let's say. I'm a fairly positive person. I like to look for the positive, things in the muck. And so sitting with people that just want to be in grief didn't feel right for me, for my personality. Like I want to create a space for that because I believe in it. I think it's really important. And I also believe just as important is, and I didn't talk about this when I talked about Death Cafe, but I will get back to it in a second, is that talking about death helps us live our lives today more intentionally and more fully because we're living with the end in mind, right? We're living knowing that the end is coming for us like it comes for everybody. Instead of running away from that, let's plan for it. Let's make it a good death. I believe in the death positive movement that I think because of the medical advances that we've had, death has become kind of a medical experience, has become kind of sterile, and I want to bring more humanity back to that. I feel like I kind of got off on a tangent.
No, that's okay.
Back to
Do you
so
feel
back to
like
life support.
okay,
Yeah, back to life support. So we call it life support, a sacred space for grief and growth. And so we have 45 minutes of a sharing circle where anybody can talk about their grief. And we welcome all types of grief, whether you're grieving the loss of a person, a pet, a job, a relationship, part of your identity, faith, any kind of loss that you're grieving is welcome at our group. And then, so that's the first 45 minutes. And then we actually stand up and we move our bodies a little bit to change the energy, and then we move into what we're calling a celebrating life activity. And the first month, my co-facilitator does art therapy, so we had an art therapy project. This past month, we had my sister lead us in some somatic movements to help us move energy and help us to regulate ourselves. And then next month we've got a hypnotherapist coming. I'm very
Oh,
excited
very
about.
cool.
Yeah,
Do you see a lot of people having a lot of grief relief through sharing?
I do. I actually had one person that came this past Saturday reach out and ask me for a resource for a counselor because she had an awareness during the group that she got more out of the group that she needed for relief than she had with her counselor for 6 months. So she's looking for a new therapist now. So yeah, it is definitely having an impact. People like that it's not connected with a hospice, so there's no, you don't have to enter through any doorway except, the studio doorway where we hold the event. And it's not in a church because some people just won't walk into a church, and
Right.
that's their journey, right? But I wanted it to be outside of that context to make it a safe space for everybody that wants to join us.
Excellent. I think we need to go back just a little bit because we talked about the Death Cafe. We talked about the life support group. Life support,
Yep.
right?
Life support. Yep.
Um, but like, what made you come to this area of work? I think you were telling me you had some personal experiences that you just saw that there was a need for all of this community building around grief and therapy and things like that.
Yeah, so I had little breadcrumbs getting to be an end of life doula. That is not something that people are, there's probably no 7-year-old out there going, I want to be an end of life doula when I grow up, right? It's one of those things that is a calling. So I was privileged to be able to take care of my grandmother at the end of her life. In the last 13 months of her life, almost to the hour from when I got to her, she had dementia. I got to her on her 92nd birthday, and I was able to. It was COVID-y times, so it was the end of 2020. And when my uncle called us and said Grandma can't stay alone anymore, um, we need to move her into a facility, I was like, oh no, 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 we'll never see her alive again because they weren't letting people in to see their loved ones.
Hmm.
So I wasn't working for anybody at the time except myself. So I went to where she was, about 4.5 hours away, and figured it out. I will tell you, I have no kind words for dementia. It was quite the learning curve. I didn't really have much experience at all. I did end
Hmm.
up calling the 24/7 Alzheimer's hotline a couple of times when I just was at my wit's end and didn't know how to help, or was concerned I was making the situation worse. I was in Facebook groups, for people that are caregivers for people with dementia. It was a very lonely, stressful time. I was able to keep grandma home. I am so grateful for hospice and all that they do. And it was quite an eye opener, actually, to learn what they don't do. And that is really what is on my heart to share with more people, because so I was able to I was able to keep grandma home until she passed. I was sitting by her bedside eating dinner when she took her final breath. And I prepared myself for that moment. I had seen other people talk about when their loved ones had passed and not rushing through it and just honoring the moment and the sacredness of her life. And so I did. I waited about an hour. I finished my dinner. And that is significant. And I talk about that because I had released about 30 pounds because I was so stressed that my appetite was hardly anything. And for whatever reason that night, I was hungry and I was eating dinner. And I finished my dinner, and then I prayed over her and I played some music, and I just sat with the experience for a little bit. And I'm really glad I did. There was a lot of peace at that time, and a lot of, honestly, most of it was relief that she wasn't suffering anymore, because she had some really horrible delusions about
Hmm.
needing to get home to her small children. And that was just heartbreaking, watching, a mama wanting to get home to her babies and not understanding that, her kids are in their 70s now. And not even trying to explain that to her because I knew that wouldn't be helpful, but just watching
Right.
her struggle and suffer. Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah. I can share that experience too. My mom, we watched my mom take her last breath as well. And as hard as it is, because dad I didn't get to see, but mom, I did, there was that relief to it to see her no longer suffering. And, I have spiritual beliefs, so I know she's in a better place and doing back to her best self on the other side. But that's just my experience with it. So I think that's great that you have taken on this role and this responsibility that this role and responsibility to help other people kind of get through that, because it's something that you can't explain to people. It's something, once you experience it, you never forget it. And I feel like there's that urge to like share with people that it's not as horrible. I think we like have this picture in our heads that death is so horrible, but really, I mean, there is some peaceful parts to it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that, I loved about my doula training was that we were taught, what's normal and what's not normal. We were trained on the 10 most common end of life disease processes and their best comfort interventions. So we are an extra set of eyes and ears for hospice, who, if you don't know, I know you know, Nicole, but for those that don't know, typically, depending on the needs of the patient, but very typically, you get 1 hour a week with a hospice nurse and 2 or 3 visits from a CNA for bathing for the patient. That's it. That is all hospice does. There are other, I don't know how many hours are in a week off the top of my head, but all of the other hours of the day, the 98% of the time the hospice isn't there, that all falls on the family. And like I was a family caregiver, just kind of thrown into it, that's how it happens. And my heart is to help people navigate that better than I was able to. I was so overwhelmed that I didn't know what help to even ask for. So as someone
Right.
who's experienced it, I can come in and say, I can ask the questions, because your brain is just gone. There's
Right.
so much that you're thinking about and your heart's breaking, and it's just a really dynamically hard time. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
just even to help. And then I also, my heart is to encourage family caregivers to stop caregiving when they can and delegate things like grocery shopping and walking the dog and things like that to other people so that they can just spend their time, the last remaining moments with their loved one. And I have a system that can help people do that. Sign up for, it's a system. It works really well,
Oh,
to
I'm
help
sure you can
people
see that.
navigate.
I know. I remember sitting next to my mom's bed, and even though there was nothing going on, I would leave the hospital every day, like just drained. And I wasn't
Mhm.
making decisions. I was just sitting there next to her. And it's hard to make any other kind of thoughts, choices, decisions, just being in that energy as you watch somebody slowly decline and at the end of the life. So it's unexplainable. But that's why, you do the work that you do so that people can understand that it's not wrong, because I think you sit there and you're like, I should be doing something different. I should be doing more. I should be feeling different. And it's something you can't prepare for, but it is helpful to learn what other people have gone through so you don't feel so weird about it.
Yeah, and how do you think it would have changed your experience to have someone that has been through it before
Right.
alongside you, where you could vent about, all of the things that you're feeling that you don't necessarily want to talk to your family about, right? Everybody's going through a lot. And so that's another role that I play, is just kind of a sounding board. The patient's going through one set of things, the caregivers are going through other things, and nobody wants to talk to each other about it, but they need to talk, right? And so that's where, that's another role that I play as a
Oh, that's
doula.
great. Yeah, I was staying with just friends who haven't lost parents. And, I would just go and I'd be like, "Ugh," I talked to my brother, but my brother, we were both new to it. So, like, there wasn't a family member that had really gone through exactly the same experience. Or while we were going through it, honestly, I didn't even think of, like, who's gone through this before that I can talk to,
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, and of course, prior to my parents passing, I never thought about death. I avoided the conversations and I just envisioned aging parents. I didn't envision the end of life.
Mhm.
So, are there things that people could do? I mean, do you, from your perspective now that you're going through your training as a doula and things like that, like, is there something when you have healthy parents, like, so my new business is, help being taking a proactive approach, talking to families, like, how do I explain, like, the benefits of having somebody like you in their pocket in case something happens?
Sure. That's a great question. So I would say that it is a very stressful time. I don't care who you are. It is a
Right.
stressful time when your loved one is dying. I don't care if you're a doctor or nurse, like even if you're in the medical field, it's a very stressful time when your loved one is at end of life. And so having me there helps to calm the chaos. I'm trying to figure out what I want to say here.
I can cut the pauses out too.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm just going to go ahead and pause for a
Yeah,
second
no, that's
and
fine.
settle myself because that was a great question and I want to have a great answer to it.
Proactive approach to talking to a death doula.
So, one of the, another like you, I want to encourage people to be proactive. And part of the service I offer is to help facilitate the family conversations because we need to have the conversations. We need to start asking the questions. I was just recently talking to someone about this, and she said, I have been waiting for the right time to kind of talk to my mom about this stuff. And I said, there is never going to be a right time. It's never going to feel good. It's never going to be something you want to do. It's just
Hmm.
one of those things that gets to be done
Right.
because it's just part of this life. And when it's
Hmm.
not done, it is absolute chaos. I'm experiencing that with my dad right now. My grandma stayed very active in her aging, and she worked in casino gift shops until she was in her mid 80s.
Oh, wow.
That's how she was able to live alone until she was 92.
Right.
My dad, on the other hand, chose to retire early, which is great. But once he started to have physical issues riding his Harley and he had to stop riding the Harley, he chose to sit in his man cave and watch TV. And so his body and his mind both declined much quicker than grandma. And he's also one of those people that doesn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to talk about the future, talk about the end. He still doesn't want to talk about it. I got to take him to an appointment this morning. And even with the dementia that he now has, I still, he's still in there somewhat. And so I still was asking him questions today or, kind of steering the conversation in a direction. And it was a hard stop.
Hmm.
So we need to have these conversations while we still can have them. My dad
Hmm.
is not really in a place where he can make decisions anymore, and so and he didn't make the decisions ahead of time. So his house is going to go into probate probably, and I can't tell you the stacks of paperwork and stuff that I get to figure out all the things to do with.
Hmm.
Figure out all the accounts and all of the things. My sister and I made the decision to place him in assisted living in January when he started to have continence issues. The only thing that I knew was that he did not want his kids taking care of him, his personal needs
Hmm.
at the end. So I knew that when he started having continence issues that something needed to change. And so
Right.
we have him in a really wonderful residential home with just 5 residents, and his caregiver is amazing. And watching him decline is brutal. It's a million little different heartbreaks,
Ugh.
just with things like I have his wallet because they don't want him to have it at the home. So he wants to pay for breakfast, so his daughter has to hand him his wallet, so he can
Hmm.
pay for breakfast. And it's just the indignity of it all, and it's just really hard to watch. And so
Yeah.
we want to have these conversations while we're still able to have them. I also want to say that dementia is not a normal part of the aging process. It is a disease process.
Hmm.
And if we are proactive in having conversations and taking care of ourselves, we don't necessarily have to have that at the end of our life.
Yeah. I mean, that's another reason I want to do what I'm doing, because I'm going into these senior spaces and everyone's, when you get dementia, when you get Parkinson's, when you get all these diseases. And I'm like, where's everybody teaching you, like, how to prevent these things from
Mm-hmm.
happening? So
Yes.
as much as we want to change our parents and want them to have a better life, I mean, at the end, it's still their choice and they're still going to do what they're going to do.
Yep.
But as midlife adults, like, we can make changes to our life now to prevent that from happening to us. And hopefully our children, or I don't have children, just hopefully my family or whoever gets stuck with me does not have to deal with a declining person. Hopefully, we all hope to live long, full, healthy lives. So, I mean, I think as we experience this with our parents, it makes us a little bit more proactive in our own health and, doing a better job with ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did not fully answer your question about how I got into being an end of life doula.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
grandma was kind of my first experience. After grandma passed, I needed to get a job, right? I was getting paid from grandma's estate to take care of her full time. And once she passed, it was time for me to figure out how I was going to get income. And so I had this I 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm thinking about how to keep this woman safe, comfortable, and at peace. Right? Constant mental gymnastics. Once she was gone, I'm like, what do I do with all of this now? And so I felt like I called it my caregiver void. I was like, I need to fill this somehow. So I tried a couple of things that didn't quite pay the bills. And then I found a position as a peer support working for the city of Phoenix crisis response. And I was supposed to be in behavioral health crisis response. The program was new and they didn't have a partner for me on that side. So for about 4 months, I got to work with regular crisis response. And that includes going out and providing resources and assistance to people that have experienced fires. There was some assistance with police investigations, which isn't as exciting as it sounds. And then the other thing that we did was we went out and we provided resources and comfort for survivors of someone that had passed away in the home unexpectedly. So someone passes away unexpectedly, my unit gets a call, we go out to the community, to their home, and provide consolation and resources. And throughout my time there, I was like, why are those calls my favorite? That seems kind of weird. But it was another clue. And so in December of 2023, my stepmom, my bonus mom, was passing away from stomach cancer. She went into hospice just to have her pain managed. She was supposed to come back home, but I believe she chose to check out. It had been a long 3.5 years, and she was just done. She had a long conversation with my sister, and the next day she became unresponsive. And so while I'm sitting and when I got the call that she was transitioning, I was at work and I told my coworkers, I said, when we're done with this call, I need to go back to the station because I need to go home. Because I knew that my dad and my sister weren't going to be able to sit with her. Just absolutely. I am currently websiteless. I am on Facebook and Instagram as Finishing Well EOL. Um, there are hyphen or underscores in between the words on Instagram. But yes, you can both of those places. Perfect. I can send you my link tree link. Yes, yes.
Hmm. Right. No, it's great that you like connected all the dots and listened to your intuition and like all the signs that pointed you in that direction. So I think it's super exciting what you're doing, and I'm glad to have met you, and we'll definitely have some more conversations. I just wanted to get on here today and, make the first introduction because I'm sure we'll have plenty more topics to talk about in the future. So, Jen, tell everybody again, you're obviously Jenn Stone, but what's your business name, website, where can they find you? Okay, we'll put it in the notes. Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes so people can find your website or find you on social, all your things, all your things. It was great talking to you, and thank you everyone for listening today. Just trying to teach you some of the ins and outs that we find out as we go through this life that is not promised. Tomorrow is not promised, and death is coming inevitably for all of us. So we need to just have a conversation about it. We need to start addressing it and look at our own mortality and like how do you want to live out the second half of your life. We're midlife here. Like most, I think the average age right now is or average person lives till what, 79 for women and 77 for men. So at 40 years old, we're at midlife. So how are you going to live your second half of life? Address all these things up front so you don't have to think about them anymore. You don't have to have conversations all the time about it, and you just live fully each day, happy, healthy, and hopefully safe at home, because that's what your parent porter, Nicole Porter, wants. All right. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we will talk again soon.